There's something poetic about how it all started, like the kind of moment you don't realize will matter until it's too late. Jace Carter had just finished another 12-hour shift at Greenlight Books, the tiny independent bookstore on West Belmont. He was tired of customers asking for Amazon prices, tired of fixing the ancient cash register, and tired of watching people come and go from lives that looked far better than his own. But that day was different. It was raining, not the romantic kind of rain, but cold, sharp, and soaking through every stitch of his hoodie. Jace had forgotten his umbrella again. Typical. As he rounded the corner near Devon and Clark, heading toward the Red Line station, he noticed her, just standing there, drenched. No umbrella, no coat, no phone out, just smiling at the storm. She wasn't doing anything, just staring at the sky like it had whispered a secret she didn't want to forget. Jace slowed down. Something about her made him pause. She looked free. Her soaked blonde hair clung to her cheekbones. She wore an old denim jacket over a floral dress, out of season and completely inappropriate for the weather. And yet, she didn't shiver. She didn't flinch. She just laughed when the thunder cracked. That laugh. It was loud and messy, the kind that echoed even over traffic, like joy had grabbed her throat and refused to let go. Jace couldn't help it. He crossed the street, sloshing through puddles, and offered her his hoodie like a nervous high schooler. She looked at him like he'd just offered her the winning lottery ticket. "Are you always this dramatic?" she asked, eyes playful but tired. Jace shrugged. "Only when I meet strangers who might have a death wish." "Not death," she said, brushing wet strands of hair out of her face. "Just living fast." He raised a brow. "You do realize this is Chicago in November?" "Exactly," she grinned. "It's cold. It's miserable. It's perfect. Makes you feel something." He didn't know what to say to that. She held out her hand. "I'm Sky." Of course her name was Sky. He stared for a second too long before shaking her hand. "Jace." "Nice to meet you, Jace," she said, and just like that, turned away, disappearing into the crowd like a ghost in a dream. No number, no goodbye, no hint that this wasn't a one-time thing. But Jace couldn't shake her. That night, he couldn't read, couldn't sleep, couldn't stop replaying the weird electricity of that 5-minute encounter. It was like someone had pressed pause on life, and then, just as suddenly, hit fast forward. He didn't know her last name. He didn't know where she was from. He didn't know that just 4 blocks away, in a penthouse suite overlooking Lake Michigan, there was a private nurse waiting to give her another round of chemo meds. All he knew was this. He had to see her again. It had been 11 days since Jace saw her. 11 days of wondering if maybe he'd imagined her entirely. The laugh, the rain, the wild eyes, the way she called the cold perfect. He'd gone back to the same corner twice, just in case. He'd even stood under the exact awning where she'd stood, hoping the universe would cue her return like a character in a movie. Nothing. Just wind, strangers, and overpriced coffee. Then, on a lazy Sunday afternoon, he stepped into Velvet Needles, the kind of record store that smelled like dust and ambition, and froze. She was there, back to him, browsing through the vinyl aisle with deliberate ease. Her fingers moved across old album covers like she was reading Braille. He hesitated. Half of him wanted to walk out. The other half couldn't move. "Don't just stand there," she said without turning. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Jace blinked. "How did you?" "You walk loud." She turned around, smirking. Her hair was tied up in a messy bun, a scarf knotted loosely around her neck. Also, the guy at the front shouted, "Hey, Book Boy's back," when you walked in. Jace chuckled nervously. "Book Boy. Great." Sky held up an old Billie Holiday record. "This one's scratched, but it's got soul." He nodded, trying not to stare. "You come here a lot?" "Only when I want to feel something real." Her eyes sparkled. "And I like watching people pretend they understand jazz." He smiled. "What are you doing later?" Sky tilted her head. "You ask everyone that. Or just girls who stand in the rain?" "Just the ones who talk like poetry," he said before thinking. She blinked slowly, caught off guard. "That's either really charming, or you're just trying too hard." Can't it be both? She laughed, handing him the Billie Holiday record. Fine. Walk with me. They left the store together, the cold air biting through his jacket. She didn't seem to notice. They walked for 2 hours. No destination, no plan. Just conversations about the weirdest things, favorite cemeteries, hers was Graceland, what songs they'd want played at their funerals, whether or not dogs could be reincarnated as humans, and how stupid people looked while texting and walking. It was the most alive Jace had felt in months. Every time he asked something personal, where she lived, what she did for work, where she grew up, she deflected with something silly or poetic. I live in the clouds. I'm an astronaut on sabbatical. I was born in a storm. She didn't just avoid questions. She buried them under layers of performance. And still, Jace was drawn to her like gravity. When they reached the L train platform at sunset, she paused. I have a rule, she said. No attachments. No social media stalking. No finding me if I don't want to be found. Jace raised a brow. You have a rule book? She smirked. Just 1 page. She leaned in and kissed him, soft, deliberate, and entirely unexpected. And then, without another word, she stepped onto the train and disappeared again. Jace stood on the platform long after it had gone, heart thudding like a drum. He didn't know her name wasn't really Sky. He didn't know the scarf around her neck was hiding a chemo port. He didn't know her time was running out. All he knew was he wasn't going to let her disappear again. Jace didn't even consider whether it made sense. Sky had kissed him, vanished into a train, and left behind more questions than answers. Most people would have written it off as a spontaneous encounter, something fun to remember, maybe even laugh about later. But Jace couldn't. He wasn't wired like that. He wasn't chasing just a girl. He was chasing the moment, the intensity, the rawness, the way she looked at him like he mattered, like she saw something good buried beneath all the dust of his life. He started going back to Velvet Needles every 2 days, pretending to browse, always hoping to catch a glimpse. He walked the streets of Wicker Park, Ravenswood, even Lincoln Park, checking bookstores, parks, hole-in-the-wall diners, anywhere that felt offbeat, or her. He asked the guy behind the record shop counter once, nervously, if he knew her real name. The guy shrugged. We call her Sky. Comes in every couple weeks. Never pays with a card. Always tips in exact change. He left it at that. Jace started sketching her face from memory in the back of his journal. Page after page of soft smiles, sharp cheekbones, wild eyes. He didn't show anyone. He didn't have to. It was like journaling without writing a single word. Then fate showed up again. 3 weeks later, he saw her. She was sitting on a park bench in Logan Square, feeding pigeons like an old soul. It was early morning. No one else around. She wore a hoodie 2 sizes too big and headphones too retro to be ironic. Jace didn't hesitate this time. He walked up slowly, heart racing. Thought you had a rule book? She didn't look surprised to see him. Rules are meant to be broken. Or rewritten, he said, sitting beside her. She took out one earbud and grinned. You look tired. I've been chasing ghosts. Ghosts wear vintage boots and steel croissants, she asked, holding up a half-eaten pastry. Jace laughed. What kind of ghost eats carbs? The rebellious kind. There was silence for a beat, not awkward, but weighted, like they both knew they'd stepped into something they couldn't just walk away from anymore. He looked at her. I want to know you. She tilted her head. Why? Because you look like you're carrying a story no one's ever been allowed to read. She stared at him then, not the playful way she usually did, not the way she dodged or danced. Just stared, and for a second she looked afraid. Then it vanished. You ever go to the planetarium? She asked abruptly. Not since grade school. Come with me. That afternoon, they lay side by side in the Adler Planetarium dome, staring up at fake constellations. Her head rested lightly on his shoulder. She whispered stories about stars like she'd lived among them. But Jace noticed something. Every time the narrator mentioned light years or millions of years, her fingers tightened around his. And in that dark, glowing room, something unspoken passed between them. Like she wanted time to stop. Like she already knew hers was running out. But Jace didn't see it for what it was. Not yet. To him, she was still the quirky girl who laughed in the rain and kissed strangers on train platforms. He didn't know that inside her leather bag was a vial of nausea meds, or that later that night, she'd curl up on a bathroom floor in a penthouse suite, shaking and pale, whispering through tears. Not yet. Not yet. Just a little more time. There are moments in love where the world feels weightless, like everything that once felt important just dissolves. That's where Jace was. Sky had become a whirlwind in his otherwise monotone life. A beautiful, chaotic spark in the grayscale days of working retail and eating stale microwave dinners. She didn't just brighten things. She shifted his whole axis. And Sky, she made herself available just enough to keep him close, but never too close. She called, but only from unknown numbers. She showed up, but never said when she'd return. She shared thoughts, but never facts. It was maddening and intoxicating. One Friday night, she invited him to a secret jazz lounge beneath the used clothing store. No signs. No Instagram. Just a password whispered to a bouncer with gold-rimmed glasses. The place was glowing red inside, tiny round tables, candlelight flickering like secrets trying to stay hidden. Sky was in a black dress. Simple. Elegant. No jewelry. Just dark lipstick and that damn scarf again. Jace tried not to stare at it, but he couldn't help it. She wore it all the time. Even indoors. Even while sleeping. They sat in the corner, sipping whiskey sours and watching a woman in a silk jumpsuit sing Ella Fitzgerald covers. Jace leaned in. So, do you live in a castle or a van? She smirked. Why? You trying to move in? He smiled. Just want to know which fairy tale I'm in. Her face fell for a beat. Just for a second. Then she leaned over, lips brushing his ear. What if I told you I'm living someone else's story? He blinked. What does that mean? Before she could answer, her hand trembled. She knocked over her glass, whiskey splashing across the table. Shit, she whispered, pulling her hand back and clutching her side. You okay? I'm fine, she said too fast. Low blood sugar. Forgot to eat. Jace grabbed napkins and wiped her hand gently. His fingers grazed her wrist. It felt thin, fragile, and cold. Sky, I said I'm fine, she snapped. Then softer. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. He didn't push. He wanted to, but something about her eyes, wild with fear, stopped him. Later that night, as they walked through the streets, her energy faded. She leaned on him more than usual, like gravity was betraying her body. They sat on a graffiti-covered bench overlooking the river. Sky stared out at the lights. You ever feel like your life is a movie that's already written? She asked quietly. All the time, Jace said. Just not sure if I'm the main character or the comic relief. She chuckled. You're the guy who tries to save the girl, not knowing she can't be saved. Jace frowned. That's specific. She looked at him, eyes glassy. Jace, if I asked you to just enjoy the moment, not ask questions, not dig, could you do that? He didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, Yeah, I could try. She smiled, kissed his hand, and laid her head on his shoulder. He thought it was just another one of her odd poetic moments. He didn't know that beneath her dress, taped to her ribcage, was a chemotherapy port. And just 3 nights earlier, her private doctor had told her the cancer had metastasized to her liver. She was dying. Fast. And she didn't want anyone, especially him, to see her fade. Jace always told himself he wasn't obsessive. He liked to think he was grounded, logical even. The kind of guy who didn't chase things, that didn't want to be caught. But with Sky, he didn't know how not to care. When she went silent for 4 days, it was like the city had gone grayscale again. No texts. No calls. No unannounced drop-ins. Just silence. He checked Velvet Needles. Twice. Nothing. He stopped by the jazz bar. The bouncer shrugged. She comes and goes. Never leaves a name. He paced his tiny apartment, rereading old texts. Random emojis. Voice notes of her laughing at pigeons. A photo of her feet in a bathtub full of rose petals, captioned, Be the chaos. What did that even mean? On the 5th day, He tried calling the unknown number she used last. Disconnected. That's when the questions started hitting harder. Who was she, really? How did she have so much free time? Where did she get the cash for impromptu museum nights, rooftop dinners, and vintage perfume? And then the biggest question of all. Why was she always disappearing? He tried to distract himself with work, but every time a girl with a scarf walked into the bookstore, his heart leapt, then sank. Finally, late one night, as he dragged his laundry basket into the apartment lobby, he saw her, sitting on the worn couch near the mailboxes, barefoot, knees drawn to her chest. Sky. Her face was pale. No makeup. Dark circles under her eyes. "Where the hell have you been?" he blurted. She didn't answer right away. Just looked up at him, like she wasn't sure she was real. Then softly, "I needed to disappear for a while." Jace dropped the basket and sat beside her. "You don't get to just vanish." She winced. "I didn't think you'd notice." "Bullshit." Silence. "I'm not used to being missed," she whispered. "You don't get to say that," he said, eyes burning. "You don't get to show up, light my world on fire, and then act like none of it matters." Her lip trembled, but she didn't cry. "I didn't want you to see me like this." "Like what?" "Real." She stood abruptly. "Come on." He followed her up the building's creaky stairs to the rooftop. The city skyline stretched around them like a painting. Wind whipped her hair as she leaned against the railing. "I used to come here as a kid," she said. "When the world felt too loud, I'd lie on the roof and count windows. Pretend every lit room was someone with a better life." Jace walked closer. "Why do you talk like you're always running out of time?" She turned to face him, and for the first time, the walls cracked, her voice barely a whisper. "Because I am." Before he could respond, she kissed him. But it wasn't like the other times. Quick, playful, impulsive. This one felt like goodbye. She pulled back, pressing her forehead against his. "If I tell you everything, you'll look at me differently. You'll feel sorry. And that'll kill me faster than the cancer ever could." Jace froze. "Wait, what?" She stepped back, tears in her eyes. "Not tonight. Please. Just let this night be beautiful." And before he could say another word, she was gone again, swallowed by the stairwell, leaving him alone under the stars. The morning after that rooftop kiss, Jace didn't hear from Sky, nor the next morning. But something had changed. He wasn't panicking anymore. He wasn't pacing or guessing. He was angry, because now he knew the one thing she never wanted him to know. She was dying, and she still wouldn't let him in. It was a quiet rage that built slowly, not loud or dramatic, but heavy in his chest like wet cement. He returned to work at Greenlight Books, trying to function, stacking new releases, ringing up distracted customers, watching rain collect in the corners of the window pane. Then he found it. A letter, folded neatly between the pages of a vintage copy of The Bell Jar, the same book he'd once told Sky had saved his life after his mom died. On the front, in messy, feminine handwriting. "Jace." He opened it slowly, heart pounding. "I didn't want you to find this. But if you did, it means I was too weak to hide anymore. I wanted to be normal for once. Just a girl. Not a diagnosis. Not a name on a corporate building. Just Sky. Please don't come looking for me. I've already taken too much. No signature. Just a lipstick stain in the corner and a pressed violet petal inside." Jace didn't know what to do. But fate, as it often does, didn't wait. At 6:15 p.m. that evening, a black SUV pulled up outside the bookstore. Tinted windows. Sleek. Quiet engine. The driver, a middle-aged man in a tailored suit, stepped inside, looked around, and calmly asked, "Are you Jace Carter?" Jace hesitated. "Who's asking?" "Ms. Rowan requested your presence." Jace blinked. "Ms. who?" "Sky Rowan." The name didn't register immediately. "She asked me to find you if she went dark for more than 3 days. Please. We don't have much time." Jace, numb, got in the car. They drove through the city in silence, weaving through traffic like ghosts, until the skyline transformed from grungy and familiar to pristine and untouchable. And then they stopped. Rowan Holdings, one of the most powerful private investment firms in the Midwest. a name he'd only seen printed in Forbes lists and Wall Street memos. I think you have the wrong. She's on the 41st floor, the driver said. Penthouse suite. Jace stepped out slowly, shoes echoing against the marble as he entered the building. The elevator opened directly into a glass-walled palace. Art worth millions. Furniture that didn't look touched. A view that swallowed the city whole. And on the couch, Sky, not in boots or scarves or denim jackets, but in silk pajamas, barefoot, with an 4 drip beside her and a nurse quietly checking her vitals. She looked up. No mask. No jokes. Just raw, wide-open honesty. You weren't supposed to see this, she said quietly. Jace stepped in, unsure of where to stand in a room made of secrets. You're Sky Rowan? She nodded. You own this. Among other things. And you're dying, she finished for him. Silence. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. I wanted just one chapter of my life to not be about money or medicine. I wanted to know what love felt like, without pity. Jace shook his head, stepping closer. You think I pity you. I know how people look at me when they know the truth. Well, maybe they didn't love you the way I do. That stopped her, dead still. You love me, she whispered. I think I've loved you since that night in the rain. She let out a broken breath. Then you better hold on, because the ending's not a happy one. Jace didn't flinch. He walked across the room and knelt beside her. If there's one thing I know, he said, you don't get to write the story alone anymore. They didn't say it out loud, but they both felt it. Time had become currency. Every second together felt like a stolen coin, borrowed from a future Sky knew she wouldn't live to see. After the night Jace saw her truth, the penthouse, the 4 drip, the name that carried weight, everything changed. Not because he pitied her, but because now he knew how precious every single moment was. And so, they built a world. Their own world. Not made of months or milestones. Just fragments of joy stitched together with reckless hope. Sky's nurse, Alina, a no-nonsense Haitian woman with sharp eyes and a soft soul, helped them plan it. She adjusted her medication schedule to match their adventures, warned Jace when Sky would crash, and quietly cried when they didn't look. The first night, they rented out a planetarium. Jace didn't even know that was a thing, but Sky knew a guy. Just the two of them under a dome of stars, lying on bean bags, drinking hot chocolate, and watching a slow dance of constellations she could no longer name without trembling. Another day, they spent an afternoon in the Field Museum. She wore a disguise, hoodie, sunglasses, a baseball cap. They took selfies next to dinosaurs, kissed behind ancient sarcophagi, and raced wheelchairs through empty corridors after hours. At night, they slept on couches, rooftops, strangers' porches, anywhere that wasn't predictable, anywhere that made her feel alive. And every time Jace looked at her, he saw it, the light behind her eyes, fierce but flickering. He watched her eat slower, laugh softer. Sometimes she'd hold her stomach like a bomb was ticking inside. But she never said stop, never said no. Then came the train ride, a private Amtrak cabin from Chicago to Denver, just to watch the world blur by through the snow. In that quiet room, wrapped in blankets, Sky rested her head on his chest and whispered, "What do you think happens when we die?" Jace thought for a second. "I think we leave behind pieces, memories, ripples, and people tell our stories long after we're gone." She looked up. "Promise you'll tell mine?" "No," he said, brushing a tear from her cheek. "I'll finish it." She kissed him like she believed him. But that night, when he was asleep, she curled up in the bathroom of their cabin and cried silently into a towel, trying to muffle the sound of her pain. The cancer had spread again. She could feel it in her bones, in her chest, in the way her breath got shorter after every laugh. She didn't tell Jace. Not yet, because there was still one thing left to do. One thing he would never see coming. And if she had to use her last ounce of strength to make it happen, she would. It started with a call to her lawyer. "Put the trust in motion," Sky said. "Miss Rowan. Don't argue. It's time." The lawyer hesitated. "And the beneficiary?" "Jace Carter. Everything. He's the one." He paused. Does he know who you really are? No, she whispered. And he never will, not for me. The next day, in a downtown high-rise with floor-to-ceiling glass, Sky signed over every major share of Rowan Holdings' private portfolio into a blind trust. It was clean, quiet, legal, and irreversible. Her name would fade behind the structure, but her legacy, her fortune, her network, her real estate, even her patents, would shift to a man who thought she was just a strange girl in the rain. When the meeting ended, she sat alone in the boardroom for nearly an hour, staring at her reflection. There were moments she didn't recognize herself anymore. The scarf was a permanent fixture now, not a choice, but a shield. Her bones stuck out beneath her sweater. Her nail beds were pale. Even the strongest foundation couldn't hide the sickness anymore. But her eyes? Still wild. Still hers. That night, she returned to Jace's apartment. Not the penthouse, not the hotel suites, but the little walk-up in Lakeview where love didn't care how rich or sick she was. He was making grilled cheese on a skillet too old to be legal. She watched him from the doorway, heart aching. He turned and smiled. You look tired. She shrugged. I feel alive. They ate in bed, under a broken ceiling fan that ticked every 6 seconds like a countdown. After dinner, he pulled her close, brushing her cheek with his thumb. Marry me. Sky froze. I'm serious, he said. You don't even know my middle name. I don't care, he whispered. Let's get married tomorrow. Or tonight. Or 10 years from now. I don't care about the rules. Tears welled in her eyes. I can't. Why not? Because I'm leaving. He sat up, confused. What do you mean? I mean I can't stay in one place too long, Jace. I'm not built for forever. He swallowed. Is this about the cancer? She didn't answer. Then fight it, he said. Please. We'll find another doctor. A trial. Anything. I don't care what it costs. I already fought, she whispered. For 3 years. I've had every poison pumped into me. My body's tired, and I've made peace with it. But I haven't. I know, she said, gently kissing him. That's why I haven't told you everything. She curled up in his arms, letting the weight of her choices press between them. Later that night, when Jace was asleep, she slipped quietly from his bed and opened his desk drawer. Inside, she placed a small envelope with a red wax seal. On the outside, in her handwriting, open this when I'm gone. And next to it, she laid down a pocket watch, her father's, engraved with a single word. Now, it was the same word Jace once told her he lived by. Because she couldn't give him a future, but she could give him a lifetime of now. It started with a cough. Not the dramatic, hacking kind, just a sharp breath Sky couldn't catch during one of their morning walks along the frozen lakefront. Jace had made coffee from the corner bodega. Sky had insisted on extra whipped cream. She always did. He was laughing about a dog in a sweater when he turned and saw her doubled over, hand clutched to her ribs. Scott, she waved him off. Just a cramp. But her knees buckled seconds later. She collapsed on the sidewalk like a marionette with cut strings. Scott, the next few minutes blurred, screaming for help, calling 911, his voice cracking, her lips turning blue, the spilled coffee still steaming on the concrete like some cruel joke. They rushed her to Northwestern Memorial. Machines, monitors, wires, alarms. Jace sat in the ER waiting room with hands trembling, replaying her smile over and over like a lifeline. When the nurse came to get him, her face said everything before she opened her mouth. She's asking for you. He found her in a quiet ICU room, pale, still, oxygen hissing softly beside her. Her eyes fluttered open when he walked in, and even then, even dying, she smiled. Hey, she rasped. You look like hell. He choked out a laugh. You scared the shit out of me. I was hoping you'd say something more romantic. Jace pulled a chair close, gripping her hand. Don't do this. Don't you dare do this. I didn't choose this, she whispered. But I did choose you. Tears streamed down his face. Then fight. Please fight. She shook her head gently. It's time. No. Yes, she whispered. But it's okay. You gave me something no one else ever did. What? Peace. He buried his face in her hand. She took one long, shaky breath. I'm not afraid, she said softly. And then she was gone. Just like that. No final gasp. No drama. Just silence. The kind that empties you. Flashback. Her laugh in the planetarium. Her kiss under the jazz lights. The snow outside the train window. The raindrops that first night. How she smiled at the sky like it was her best friend. Back in the hospital room, Jace held her hand long after the monitors went flat. The nurse came in eventually, soft-spoken. Take your time. But time had already taken everything. It was a week after the funeral. A quiet, private affair. Just 10 people in a flowerless chapel. Per her wishes, no black, no speeches, no media. Just Billie Holiday playing softly in the background. And a photograph of Sky in that ridiculous scarf, and her favorite sunglasses, laughing mid-blink. Jace hadn't spoken much since. He barely ate, barely slept. The world felt like it had lost color. Food had no taste. Music sounded flat. The city, once electric when she was alive, now felt like a museum to things he couldn't touch anymore. And then he remembered the envelope, still tucked inside his desk drawer, still sealed. Hands trembling, he opened it slowly. Inside a letter. Thick, creamy paper. Her handwriting, uneven, rushed, but still Sky. Jace, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. Or as I like to say, I've caught the next train. I hated goodbyes, so I'm writing this instead. Thank you for seeing me before you saw the money, or the sickness, or the shadow of what I'd become. You made me feel alive again. Not just like a girl with cancer, or a name on a magazine cover. Just a person. A mess. A miracle. Both. And now I'm leaving you something. Everything, actually. Jace stopped reading. He looked down and noticed the other piece of paper in the envelope. A notarized legal document. Unmistakable. Transfer of ownership. A trust. Stocks. Property. Equity. Art. Charities. Control of Rowan Holdings. All in his name. He blinked, heart racing. Sky had left him everything. Back to the letter. You once told me you had nothing to offer the world, but you gave me the best weeks of my life. That's not nothing. So now I want you to build something. Not for me. Not for the money. For the people like us, who feel lost, who think their story is over. Use it all. Write books. Build homes. Fund chaos. Start a planetarium in my name. Or don't. Just live well. Fully. Loudly. And whenever you think of me, remember this. I loved you. Deeply. Silently. Completely. And I always will. Now go be great. Sky. By the time he finished reading, the paper was soaked in tears. But for the first time since she died, Jace didn't feel heavy. He felt full. He stood up, stepped out onto the fire escape, and looked up at the sky. That same endless blue she used to talk about like it was her playground. And for a moment, he swore he could hear her laugh in the wind. 1 year later, Jace never spent the money for himself. He started a foundation in Sky's name, built a cancer treatment center for young women, opened a record store and jazz bar in her honor, built planetariums in 3 cities. And every year on her birthday, he returned to the same rainy street corner where they met, holding a violet in one hand and her father's pocket watch in the other, still engraved with the word, now. She was just a stranger in the rain. But sometimes a stranger leaves behind the kind of love that writes you a brand new ending. If you made it this far, don't forget to like, comment, and share this story with someone who still believes in second chances and once-in-a-lifetime love. And for more powerful stories like this, subscribe to Echoes of Truth, where every tale reveals the beauty hiding in heartbreak.